This is the Believe Crew podcast, and the business is you. Being an entrepreneur, no matter what stage of the journey, requires personal growth to sustain your success and create the ultimate life of abundance. I'm Jamie White, founder of Believe Crew and your host. Join me as I interview coaches, entrepreneurs, and authors that inspire us to go where they have gone. Be inspired today to grow and be the best you. I am so excited to have Lori Kostenuk. Did I say that right?
Yep, you sure did.
Awesome. Joining me on the podcast today. And Lori wrote a book that has changed my life and many of those that I know. And I'm excited to have her tell us a little bit more about how the book came to be and who she is. So, Lori, are you able to tell us a little bit more about the story behind how the book got written and where you are coming from today?
For sure. Thank you so much, Jamie, for having me on. This is an honor for me. So Lori Kostenuk is my name, and I'm basically a mom. I'm a wife. I'm a business owner, and now I am an author. And so we've come through a fair little bit in the last maybe 5 years, and which has totally changed the way I go through life now. It's totally changed my thought process from what we have learned. And so our baby, we have 4 children. And so Trent is our youngest, and he went through some crazy times in his teens. And it was just quite a struggle because we could not figure it out. He was popular at school. He was attractive, you could say. The girls thought he was anyways. And he was confident. He had great at school. His marks were great. And then all of a sudden, he just crumbled. And we could not figure this out. And we were determined we were going to figure it out if it was the last thing we do. And we let him know that he is not alone in this, and that we would not rest until it was figured out. And the interesting part is what we have learned through our journey is that where he got his help was, you could say, from tapping into the universal energy laws. And yet I knew that somehow, somewhere, this had to be in the Bible too. I'm a Christian mom all my life, mom, wife. I was a child. We were Christians, and I was a Christian, and it was really all I knew. And yet I couldn't figure this out. And I thought, well, why would God allow this? Why would he allow my son to go through this torment? And so I searched the scriptures after we figured out, and it was all there in the Bible. So the purpose of me writing this book is to bridge that gap between the energy world and the biblical language. So it's 2 different languages, but what we have come to understand is that it's exactly the same thing, because God created these energy laws, and he created them for us to tap into. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
I love what you're pointing out and the mission that you're on. You know, I've gotten to the point of saying that I describe myself as Christian woo-woo because I don't know how else to say, like, we're bridging 2 things that have been kind of kept separate. And the work that we've done in the energy field, because I was kind of in the same place as you. I'd been Christian my entire life, and felt like I was running into walls that I didn't understand why they were there. And even as I started to grow as a person and develop personally, I was in a cycle that I couldn't seem to get out of, and I just couldn't understand. And part of that was that my husband was an addict. And even if he was in, like close to recovery or getting into that, like where he wanted to recover, we still couldn't get through some of that. And then as we tapped into some of the energy stuff, it just sped up the process, opened up new opportunities. And I was like, I'm not going back. And then the more we looked in the scriptures, the more we are like, how did we miss this the first time?
Yes, exactly.
Like, I'm like, what? It's been there the whole
Yeah.
time.
Yes, that is exactly. And that is really what has happened, Jamie, is I look at verses or even Jesus' words in a deeper way. But yet it's very simple. It's what happens with the Christian community is we tend to spiritualize everything when really Jesus meant it in the literal way. Like ask, believe that you've received it, and then it shall be yours.
I
So you have to
love,
ask with that belief.
yeah, I love when you talk about unwavering faith. Like the level that I'd been praying before was like, help me, Lord. I hope you can, like, where do you want me? But I'm not really sure how to listen. and,
Yes.
and then moving into this, like, just knowing and complete unwavering faith of like, okay, if I can't ask an unwavering faith, then I need to do a little bit more digging and get to a different point myself. And so I love the way that you really bring that out, just to be able to in unwavering faith.
Mhm. Well, and that's the thing is we have to learn small. Like faith does begin as a grain of mustard seed. So even trusting in the smaller things and seeing those manifest, and then the cycle of giving gratitude and living in that place of gratitude, which gives us confidence to maybe ask for something more bold or to request or thank God. In my book, I say that quite a bit. Is sometimes the greatest way, the most powerful way of asking is thanking God for what you're asking for, as if you've already received it. I mean, that's Mark 11:24, and it's powerful when you can move through life with that liberation of knowing that it's all taken care of. And now when there's a struggle that comes up, even in an everyday life, or if um, if something comes up and the kids will send me a text, or they'll say, hey mom, can you send me good vibes? I've got this to do, or I've got this to do today, or this has come up. I'll just do that. And I'll just say, God, Father, I leave this in your hands. Please, thank you for taking care of it. And it's just a liberation, knowing that I don't have to fret about it. If it's the best thing will show up. And I totally believe that. When we leave it with him, the best thing will show up.
It's been very interesting journey for my family personally, as Kevin and I have stepped into really believing that it's going to be good, and that whatever God has planned, it's going to be good, even if we don't know and understand it. And so we're definitely in the middle of that on a regular basis. And what did you find? You mentioned your kids again. Did all of your kids embrace it? Like, what ended up happening in the shift in your family? How old was everybody when this started to happen? Because I know, how it's changed our lives and how we talk to each other. It's different, you know?
Yes. Oh, and we catch each other too, saying something is maybe saying negative. We'll catch
Yes.
each other. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, my
So
kids don't let me get by with anything anymore.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And even just that language totally changes our thought process, and it creates new brain paths in our brains, so that that becomes automatic, then the new way of speaking. But yes, how did it change our family? Okay, so the youngest, I think I've said his name, Trent. I think he'd be okay with this. He was 18 when you could say the crisis came, and that's a decade ago now. It's hard to believe, but when the crisis came, he was 18, and yes, it affected he's a twin. So there's another one just like him. No, his twin is very different. But for sure, it affected his twin and all of us. There's two other siblings besides the twins, and my husband. Orland's first response when this all took place is, well, pull up your socks and get over it. That was
Right.
kind of his first response, like, be a man.
Right.
This is just deal with it, get over it. But we've learned that it wasn't that easy. It takes work. It takes belief. It takes new thought patterns. It takes a new language. It takes a new belief system. Which is huge. There's a verse that says, as a man thinks, so is he. So you've got to change the way you think about yourself. And it's not just saying the words, but you have to believe. You have to believe. And so it was a process. At first, my first thought was, okay, well, we knew we weren't into the big pharma or medicating. But I want to clarify that, though, because even as a disclaimer, he needed that to begin with, to get him to a base level where he could then begin to develop these new brain patterns, develop this new language, this new belief system, this faith. So, and what he found too is, I think it's okay to say this, that as long as he was on those meds in a big way, or you could say in a regular way, it limited his heights as well. Like, so it kept him kind of at a base level. It kind of kept him from going lower, but it also kept him from going higher. So he knew that he had to figure this out because he did not want to maintain a status quo for the rest of his life when he knew that joy and love and peace were possible. And the Bible said so. And Jesus, his words were even, I want you to know the joy that I have. So he knew it was possible, and I knew it was possible. So he knew that meds would be a short-term answer, and he was not stopping at that. And so therefore, his determination helped me be determined. And yeah, it was just absolutely amazing.
You mentioned about believe, and that's why we named our company Believe Crew, because when we started understanding how belief systems impact our lives, and I didn't even know they existed, like, just that, and really just believing in people, right? And being, I mean, the combination of all the things believe means to us. But so your husband came from a place that is very common, and just like, you got to get through this, just pull up your boot, like, we got to do this.
Yeah.
And you started with him on meds to get him a base level, but knowing that that's not where it was going to stay. Again, some of the kids were older at this point and out of the house. So did they come along with you on the ride, or were they like, what are you guys into?
Okay, so our older son was well on his way. Like, he had his own life. He was going to law school at that time. And so he didn't know the details, but he knew something was up. And our daughter, she was very much empathetic. She was right where we were. We got to figure this out. And meanwhile, she was going through her own stuff too at that time. So I tell you, during those years, I lost weight. People say to me, "Oh, Lori, your life is so easy, and you've got 4 adults that are this and that, and for adult children that are this and that, and you've done so well. Well, I tell you, we've been through the mill, and nobody knows that. And it's not that we've hidden it, but we're focused on dealing with it,
Right.
and
Right. Yeah.
and but we have learned so much. We have learned to create,
Yeah.
and he, like, where he was by his last year of university, he was literally creating his world. And I just want to tell you one little story that was kind of cool, just kind of the beginning versus kind of the end
Yeah.
of his those that university journey. In his last year, he was down in Wyoming going to university and finishing his engineering degree. And he was sharing his roommates. He had some roommates, and he was in his last year, or his last 6 months, so he didn't really have a choice of who he could room with. So he was given a room for 6 months, which was unusual at that time. But so he had these roommates that were they were sound guys, and so they had, in the living room, they had set up $10,000 worth of equipment and sound equipment. And so when Trent got there, he's thinking, "Oh my goodness, are we into the party scene here or what?" But anyways, he called me one night and he said, "I'm going to study, Mom, till about 3 in the morning, and then I got to get up at 5 and do this midterm." And he said, "So send me good energy." And so, okay, I will. And so he says, "I'll catch up on my sleep tomorrow night." So tomorrow night, the next night, he calls me at 8:30 and he says, "Mom, you're never going to believe what is going on in this house." He said, "There is like 30 people in my living room. The music, the sound system is just shaking the whole building. And here I am literally in my walk-in closet trying to get some sleep." And he's exhausted. And I said, "Trent, you know what to do." He says, "Yeah, I do." And so what he did, he told me after, he said, "I just thank God for taking care of the situation." And he said, "Thanks, Father, for taking care of the situation," immediately. By the time he walked to the door of his room, he opened the door and people were filing out of his apartment. And his buddy in a different room, he opened the door. He couldn't believe it. He says, I just can't believe it. All of a sudden, they said, "Okay, let's get out of here." And they started leaving. It was cool. And he just absolutely knew that God would take care of it. That is where his faith was at the end of his university term.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And I did mention this in the book too, but might just mention it again for your viewers. At the end of his university term, he was kind of running out of funds, you could say, and he's used to calling the mom and dad bank, but anyways, he just said, "Thanks, God, for sending funds to complete this so that I can do my purpose for my life." And so within a day or two, he would always, this happened many times, he would get an email saying, "You got the scholarship." Like immediately 2,500 was in his account, immediately. Like, that is the kind of level of belief he was at near the end of his term. And it wasn't a selfish thing. It was, this is an issue. Thanks for taking care of it. So that I can do what I'm supposed to be doing and focusing on my purpose. And so he would have had to have inspiration. He would have had to have responded to inspiration that came, say, 6 months before, to apply for these scholarships, right? So that's what I always say to my readers is, whenever you feel inspired to do something, when it feels light to do it, you feel moved to do something, when you have a gut feeling about something, respond, do something. If it's picking up a phone, making a phone call, if it's sending somebody an email, just do it, because you don't know down the road what will show up because of what you did 6 months ago. And there's a lot of people who feel that one of the biggest challenges in the Christian world is we feel, I was raised feeling this way too, is that God doesn't care about the natural things. Like,
I've heard that a lot
yes,
when we get that kickback, and it's really hurt a lot of people to believe that.
yes. And it actually limits our faith when we do that, because what we're saying is, because God cannot give us beyond what we believe, right? So if we believe that God doesn't care about that, well, then he won't deal with that. He won't be a part of that. So if we, I mean, so I guess for many Christians, you actually need more faith to be able to believe that, because it's been really a tough one for a lot of people. And we know the Bible teaches us that God takes care of the birds of the air. So why would he not take care of us? He takes
Right.
care of their basic needs. So why wouldn't he take care of us? And I think the reason why we were raised with that thought process is because there was a selfish, they were worried about maybe the selfish requests that we could make. But we have to remember, we have to believe it. Okay. I mean, I can say, I can ask God for $5 million, but do I believe it? Obviously, I wouldn't. I don't believe that. Like, so I
Right.
mean, so,
Right.
you know what I
Right.
mean? So you've
Right.
got to
Right.
believe. That's why your faith has to begin as a grain of
Right.
mustard seed.
Right. Yeah, this has been a very interesting process for me over the last 15 years, because my mom died of cancer in 2006 and my husband's mom died of cancer the year later. And we had been interested in and doing alternative things, and so both of them had been kind of on the alternative side of things, but we were more into um eating good food or trying alternative supplements. And we spent hundreds of dollars over the years in supplements. And then now with our family, we've turned completely to energy work and to,
Yeah.
trusting that God is, interested in healing us according to our faith too. And when I think about some of the ways that I was stuck before, there were things I didn't want to believe to be true. And there's a verse in Proverbs, I can never remember if it's 17:22 or 22:17, but it says that a merry heart is like good medicine, and sorrow dries up the bones. And my mom had dry bones. She had had rods put in her arms, and the marrow came out as sawdust. And that verse to me today is so clear and so simple. But 15 years ago, I couldn't understand the verse. I literally couldn't comprehend
Yeah.
it because I didn't want to believe that she was so full of sorrow. And
Yeah.
so part of this journey has been letting go of giving things meaning and letting go of the things I thought to be true. And even obviously, like you say, judgment stops flow and so many things. And it's just like one little piece at a time. Do one little piece at a time. It probably took me 10 years, maybe not quite, to be willing to be ready to understand what that verse meant. And so when I
Oh,
see that for myself, I understand how it can be a
yeah.
challenge, to truly believe, because there's some people that we know that we love. And if we knew the truth, or if we were willing to accept the truth, it might cause pain. And that's really what I found for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So true. So true. And one thing that I like, so even in this thought process that it's selfish to ask for natural things, what stresses us out the most actually is the lack of you could say the lack of money, or the lack of whatever it is in our life. So does it not make sense that if we didn't have to worry about that, that we could focus more on our purpose, our life's purpose? So when I ask for something, it could be for a betterment of somebody's situation. It could be whatever it is. I just know that if I ask for it and leave it in God's hand, then I'm no longer stressing about it. It's no longer an issue. If you can't pay your bills, that's a stress. And so then our focus, rather than being on our purpose, it's on those bills that you can't pay. It's on your somebody's relationship. It's on, say, a court case. It's on. So to be able to leave things in God's hands is a liberation that is unspeakable, really. It's just absolute liberating to be able to leave it in God's hands. And then we could focus on our purpose in life and what God lays on our heart and the promises he puts on our heart. We can focus on that. And I mean, there is a danger of maybe asking for selfish requests and even believing that you're going to get it. But, you know, we have to remember that that does bring leanness to our soul. And the Bible tells us that, because that happened to those in the Old Testament, is that they made their request, but it brought leanness to their soul. So we have to remember that whatever we ask, this is what I do. When I ask for something, I ask in such a way that I am thanking God for taking care of that situation so that I can focus on my purpose and that he would be glorified, not me. So it would be for his glorification. And I would add that on to whatever my request is. And then after you see it being realized, you're manifested, then you glorify him. You give him the praise. He gets the credit, not you, not me. He gets the praise, and then it's a positive cycle. God loves it when, see, and that's the thing is God loves to be glorified, but it's not because, I don't believe it's because of him having any selfish desires to be glorified, but it's because he knows what it does for us. He knows how we feel when we glorify him. And when we live in that state of gratitude, it shifts our energy up, our level of faith up. So, and just getting back to the bridging that metaphysical bridge between the energy world and the spiritual world, or the Christian world, sorry, the energy world, they're both spiritual. But just the language part, in the energy world, we call it increasing our level of consciousness, okay, to a higher level of consciousness. Whereas in the Christian world, we talk about increasing our faith. So they're both increasing our belief system. And the two sides, you could say, a lot of Christians, I think, get a little bit leery about the energy world because they think of woo-woo, they think of, you know, I don't know what else, but
I've
really,
had someone ask if it was witchcraft.
yes,
And
exactly.
I
Yeah.
think we have people, you know, unfriending us, and I'm like, I can't go back. You know, I am not interested in going back.
Yeah,
But
no, it's, you see, that's fear. That's a fear-based thought,
yeah.
witchcraft. It direct them to the Bible.
Yeah.
Direct them to the Bible. Say, if you call that witchcraft, it's about trusting in God that he's going to take care of it, that he's going to take care of this situation. And I just remember we had one family member that had a troubled husband, and there was a court case going to happen. And I personally did not want him in jail, because he had children, and yet I did not want, yet I was worried about him being released because he could harm his wife. So I just prayed that God would take care of it. And you know what? He did an amazing thing. And even the lawyers involved, they had never even heard of what the settlement was before. They had never seen it before. And yet it was actually called a peace bond. And in Canada, we don't even hear, like these lawyers didn't even hear about peace bonds. So he still had the, you could say, the restraining order, but yet he didn't go to jail. So his kids didn't have to deal with their father in jail. But yet he still had to go through all these programs like anger management, and he had to do a series of this. We couldn't have asked for anything, better. It was just amazing. Like, and that you could say, well, that's a natural situation. But you know what? It's everything: natural, mental, you could say physical, mental, and spiritual. Like they're all intermingled. They all affect each other. And if we've got blocks, that can affect our health.
Yeah,
That
so
can,
often.
yeah,
You're reminding me of something that happened recently for someone that we were working with, and she had a situation that she just really felt was almost impossible, and she just did not know how to get out of it, and she didn't know if she could go through it, and it just really felt overwhelmingly impossible. And I remember asking her if she could believe that it could be possible that there could be a miracle, and like God could take the situation. And she was at the point where she really just could barely even believe that. Like it was just so set in stone. It was just going to happen. And and then I remember asking, like, well, how about we start with what would it take for you to be willing to believe or
yeah,
or to have the courage to believe, like something that's
good.
like, we got to go back a little bit. You're not
Yes.
at the point where you believe it can be possible. So we need to get you to the point of like, what will it take for you to believe it could be possible?
That's awesome. It sounds like you read my book.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And the amazing thing, which I knew, I felt it. Like I've been in a place where I see the potential in people and I see the potential in what he could create. And I'm like, and I remember saying to her, like, I see this. I know you don't right now. And she left, and I got a text from her 2 days later. And something that we could not have created, we could have not thought
Yeah,
to ask for, but we literally just left it in like the what would it take stage.
yeah,
And it was the most perfect solution that we could have never thought to ask
yeah.
for. And so,
And
yeah,
like that question is powerful. What would it take? Because what that does is it opens a world of possibilities that like you say, that you never even thought of. Whereas if we would say, what would it, or say we believe a certain solution has to happen, this is the way it has to be solved. Well, that totally limits God. It
totally.
limits all possibilities.
Hmm.
But whereas if we leave it open,
Yeah.
and if we don't look for answers, like when we
Yeah.
say, what will it take for this situation to be resolved? And don't look for answers, then
Yeah.
that leaves God totally open to, and it will be settled in the best way possible.
I'm
It's just
laughing.
amazing.
Yeah, I'm laughing because it's so amazing and it's so awesome. And I've seen it happen. And yet I still find myself in those moments of like, okay, Kevin and I trying to figure something out ourselves and forgetting to just say, what would it take, and being
Oh,
totally available. It's like we ride that line of unbelief all the time, or
oh,
where
I
our belief
know.
is just like so fragile. It's like, I don't know if I can trust it this time. You've said, so much has changed with your family, and I'm just assuming that your husband is now completely on board. Is that?
Yes. Um, I wouldn't call him, like,
Yeah.
he's very careful. I mean, but
Yeah.
he's definitely on board, and because he's seen a miracle happen.
Right. Right.
And I would say, like, he still doesn't use the energy language though.
Right. Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but
Yes.
his faith in God his faith in has definitely increased,
Mhm.
but
Yeah.
he's just kind of, you know what I
I
mean? He's,
totally know what you mean.
yeah, but
Because
he just
be
doesn't use that. He doesn't feel
yeah.
totally comfortable to use the laws of the universe language.
I was very hesitant to different things at first, and I remember even, when we first so this is a couple years ago, and I said to my husband and my sister-in-law, the 2 that are in Believe Crew with me, Kara that you met, and she has, by the way, given out your book quite a bit.
Oh,
And,
ah.
and so I sat down with them and I said, something's missing. Like there's, and so we all decided that we were going to go, kind of, and we'd all been coming from a Christian based perspective. She was actually in the ministry. And it was like, what is this that we're missing? Cause something is still, and, when she first started to bring some things to me with a little different language, I remember being
Yeah,
like, that's for you.
yeah,
You
yeah,
do you. And
yeah,
it has taken a little bit for me to even get comfortable with some of the language. But again, a lot of the language is even in the Bible, but it's
yeah,
it's how we interpret it. And so it's just been
yeah.
really interesting to go through the process ourselves and then our family transition.
But just say you take the law of attraction or the law of vibration. Um, so what that is whatever you send out is what you get back, or what you send out is what you attract back to you. Okay, that's the law of attraction. And a lot of people think that's woo-woo, but you take Mark 11 and 24. Ask, and these are Jesus' words, ask, believe that you've already received it, and it shall be yours. Well, that's the law of attraction right there, the law of vibration right there. And yet it's just a different language.
Right, right, right. And so I think just fully stepping into that. So it sounds like um it's amazing the transformation that's been made. And really, I'm very thankful for your book and the work that you've done to be able to combine the two because I don't know of very many other books that have done that. And so I'm very thankful. I know there's an Audible coming out, hopefully
Yes, I
soon.
actually have the, yeah, I've got them in my little, the downloads in my little hands right now. So I just have
Very
to,
exciting.
yeah, get that on Audible.
Well, I know
That's,
that there will be many that'll be excited about that. And then is there anything next for you in terms of where you feel called that God is leading you in this lane? Or are you, I know some of your other business work has been in personal development. Do you feel like you've been able to combine the two? I guess what's next?
I don't really combine that. I know I really appreciate what you're doing, but we've got some franchises that we've got to kind of be still careful with. So I haven't really been able to combine the two. That's why I really appreciate what you're doing, that you've got that liberty to do that. Um, I'm writing another book, and it's not as quick as the other one was, but there's been yeah, it's just been a very interesting journey, and very interesting journey. Um, and even just writing the other book wasn't something that I had never thought I would write a book. It was never one of my life's goals. But I just remember just what we'd been through with Trent and getting to the other side. And then I just, like I mentioned this in the book as well, in the introduction, just how this one young lady's, one of our Christian friends, her face just kept popping into my head. And so I just started, to make a long story short, I just started working with her, and I knew that she would never be able to comprehend, or this energy language. So I looked in the Bible to try and find verses that, because I knew it was there. I knew it had to be, because this is God. You know, this is tapping into what the energy laws that He has provided for our life, our healing, and our living. And living abundantly. So it's been a real journey. And when I had a compilation of all these different energy laws that I worked with her, and then one day it just, hey house, uh, came across my computer screen. Well, I remember asking God, because I just kind of got this, well, I guess I was spending a lot of time helping people individually. And my husband was actually says, well, Lori, maybe you should, kind of put something together, and like maybe not a book, but he didn't think of a book, but he thought just something that I could just send to people so I wouldn't be taking all this time away from our business is kind of
Right.
what I was thinking.
Right.
But so it was on my mind, and I didn't get peace. And so finally I said, okay, Father, if you want me to write a book, please make it obvious. And that's my question. I do ask that question a lot. If I'm supposed to do this or that, please make it obvious. And usually something obvious will happen. And sure enough, Balboa Press, a division of Hay House, came right across my screen that afternoon, and it just went from there.
I
So,
love it. So the second book, any teasers for us?
well, it's actually kind of fun. I actually have a lot of, like, I'm having a lot of fun kind of working with it, playing with it. It's not as much scripture
Mm-hmm.
as the first one was. And yeah, but it's the same.
Very cool. I think I was going to ask you if you've ever heard of the book Biology of Belief by Dr. Bruce Lipton. And there have
I
been
know Dr. Bruce Lipton. Like
okay.
I've actually met him.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hadn't known anything, and I was just starting down the journey in different books from different people. I take little pieces of this and little pieces of that. And his book, The Biology of Belief, really explains how the church had to make a decision between, and I'm not super scientific, I don't understand this stuff very well, but between our bodies being a machine and our bodies being bodies of energy. And that explains a lot of why we've been avoiding the verses or reading the verses in terms of believing that they're energetic. So that's
Yeah.
my
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
mhm, yeah.
I'll have to go pick that book up. Well, we are 99.9% energy.
Yeah, I know. Like after he
So
explained it, I was like, whatever he just said, I believe all of that.
yeah.
Anyway, so books have made a huge impact in our ability to you know, learn and grow. And the interesting thing too for me has been when I've offered some suggestions or some thoughts to people and even some books, and they've said, oh, you need to be careful. I just want you to be careful. And their carefulness actually comes from fear and worry. But
Yeah.
then the next thing that they will literally do, I've had this happen, is they will hand me a book by someone that's, maybe atheist, maybe, not Christian at all, or even come from that perspective. And they're like, hey, I was reading this great book. And I'm like, how come this one's okay? Like, so
Well, and the thing is that the last few years through COVID has taught us a lot as well. And if there hasn't been any growth and learning, then I don't know what it will take.
right. It was an opportunity. It was
It was an
absolutely an opportunity.
opportunity
Yep.
to totally
Yeah.
dive deeper. Um, and we're all on our own journey. Like we're
Right.
all on our own
Right.
journey.
Right.
And like I've had some people in our Christian community reach out from all over the world that are kind of struggling and going through some of the same things, like anxiety or some challenges that they have that they don't understand why it's there. But yet, so they've picked up a few gems from my book, and so they say, okay, well, based on what how can you go back and have fellowship with, say, people that aren't on the same page or who are kind of stuck in tradition or whatever. And I said, well, you kind of go through this period where there's judgment, okay, like where this particular person is she was at a place of judgment at judging all the others who were judging her, right? And so life is a
Oh,
mirror.
completely.
Life is
Yes.
a mirror, and we see where each other as we are. So I say, I was at that place at one point too, where I'm looking around thinking, oh my goodness, all these people are judging. Well, that's because I was at that place, right? So I was judging them for judging me. But where I can honestly say where I am now is I am very much aware that, or what I'm very much aware that they are where they are because that's where they're meant to be at this stage in their journey.
I love that.
And so I can totally love them with compassion. And I'll say, okay, that's just where they are. That's just where they are. And that's where they're supposed to be right now.
I love that.
And so like I love them. I love,
Yeah.
yeah, I really can be at a place of compassion right now for people where they
Mm.
are.
And that's so amazing. My husband has the line going through his head regularly now, whatever comes, love that. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and so every once in a while I use it back at him, right? Like, like when
Yeah.
there's something that comes up, it's like, whatever comes, love that, like sort of,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
absolutely, it feels so much more like I've said recently that unforgiveness is like cholesterol to the brain is kind of how I explain it. It's almost like it makes our thoughts fuzzy and clouded. And like you've said, judgment stops flow. And so the more that we embrace this love and this idea of truly loving where we
Mhm.
are and where others are on their journey, um, it totally shifts my entire body and being. And so
Right.
I'm very thankful. Yeah.
And one thing that I've come to discover is love, the love of God, or that it is an energy. It's an energy of love. It is a frequency. And so it's not just about us flicking a switch and saying, I love God. It's about moving upwards, our level of consciousness, our faith, whatever language we want to use, moving upward to that frequency of love. And when we do not feel that love anymore, or say we're going through an experience where we do not feel that love, well, that love is still at the same frequency.
Right.
We just have moved down into a
Right.
lower frequency. So we just have to start with gratitude again, give praise to God for all things, even a
Mhm.
sunset.
Oh, that's my favorite.
Like, oh my goodness, we live on a hill. We live on a hill. And
Jealous. We live in the woods.
oh, well,
Yeah.
see, there's beauty there too, though.
Yes, there is, but I
There's
do
beauty
chase
there too.
sunsets.
Yeah. Yeah. You missed the sunsets.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
But every night, like if I'm in town, it's 4:30, like in the winter at
Mhm.
4:30, I've got to get home before this
Yeah,
so I can watch the sunset. I make it,
yeah,
start supper while the sunsets.
yeah.
So, and I give glory to God for that. And
Mhm.
living in that state is just
Yeah.
it's liberating.
Well, thank you so much, Lori. Is there anything else that you would love to share with our guests? I really appreciate your time today and everything that you've shared, and if nothing else, it was meant for me because
Oh,
there has just been so much here.
oh, thank you. I just want to remind everyone that they're a creator. You guys are all our creators, and whether intentional or unintentional. So we create our world around us based on our belief system, based on who we believe we are, based on what we trust in. Uh, so in my book, I do mention how to intentionally create versus unintentionally. When we unintentionally create, we are victims. When we intentionally create, we are empowered. And that's where I want to leave this today is you got this.
I
Yeah.
love it. Thank you so much. Really, really
Oh, you're
appreciate it.
welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Jamie.